All right, we're going to kick off episode 7 with Jason Kinman, and we are rocking those shirts, Jason.
Let's go, baby.
So if you guys haven't been following us, we've been doing driver shirts, and this one's a very special shirt because the back of this thing, if you haven't heard, is Kinman is a Jegs, the first #1 in performance, the first Jegs driver. So pretty cool stuff, Jason.
Very cool. Very lucky.
Absolutely. So tell us, let's just hop into that. How'd you get that? How'd that come about? And I got my popcorn ready because it's gonna be a good one.
You got your popcorn? Okay. I hope you got something to drink. Dustin and Jeff Hobbs, they set up a meeting with a bunch of Derby drivers back in the early spring, and the marketing guy from Jegs was looking for some drivers to partner with, and basically just gave us some tips on what we can do to gain a following. So I listened to their advice. I started making TikToks, which at the time I didn't even have a TikTok, so I was kind of learning as I went, right? And then I made them every day for, weeks and weeks. I had a couple of videos just go crazy, and my following just started growing really quickly. And a couple of things helped that out. I think I was one of the first guys to really show different things on there about what we do. A lot of guys are showing their finished cars and doing donuts, which is awesome, but showing what I do in the garage every day. And, that came with a little bit of heat, but mostly all love and support. Currently, the support is through the roof, and it keeps growing every day. And then Jegs contacted me once my following got to a certain level and said they wanted to partner with me, and here we are. So right now I'm currently almost at 30,000 followers on TikTok, about 10K on Facebook, and then I have Instagram and YouTube, but the following's a little smaller on there. But that's how I came to get with Jegs and the partnership. So it's been a very good thing and very fortunate.
Jason likes to put everything out at once. We're going to have some fun with that. You said a lot of pretty cool things there.
All right.
We need to talk about. Okay. First thing, Jason has 26,700 followers and almost 310,000 likes. That's the video I was trying to pull up. Your big video did what, like 3.4 million?
On Facebook, it did 3.4. On TikTok, it did 2.8.
2.8
million. Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. Okay. So yeah. Nobody was doing this TikTok stuff before you hopped on board. How hesitant were you? Because every time we talk about TikTok, social media, I know I've talked to a ton of drivers personally. I'm sure you've had this. You kind of get some blowback. You get, don't show that on TikTok. Don't show that on, don't give out secrets. What, you got to walk me through that.
Well, my mindset is I can show a lot of things and not show everything. Eventually it'll get to where more people know more, but there's a lot of people in the Derby world you can help if they're newer to the sport, if they're newer to the class, if they're a youth driver and they say, man, how's this guy build a trunk? How does this guy put a cage in? Different things like that. But I didn't really focus on that as much as I focused on showing people outside of our community what we do. And I think the videos that went really big, and I have tons of videos over 100,000 likes, that I think what appealed to them is, wow, this is a Derby car, and what is this guy doing, and why is he doing it? And you get a lot of hate on there too. And I kindly respond to them positively, or I just delete it, right? And I'll say, thank you for your view, so.
You're a lot better with the haters than I am, Jason. I need to work on that. You need to rub off on me.
Yeah, you just got to kill people with kindness, A good friend of mine used to tell me that years ago. He said, just kill people with kindness, And maybe on the inside, it might bother me once in a while, but in the long run, you help a lot more people, and a lot more people appreciate it than don't appreciate it. And I knew I had a lot of views and following, but I really didn't get it until King of Ohio back in June. And I had so many people come up to me that I had no idea who they were, introduce themselves and say, "What's up, Derby Freaks?" Because I start 90% of my videos with that saying, and it's like even on the bottom of my shirt. So it's pretty cool to see people follow that. And then I also learned through the process. I have people messaging me all the time with new ideas. So not only am I helping others, but I'm also learning as I go, right?
Well, the What's Up Derby Freaks. So we were so raw into this, right? So
Yes.
I'm trying to get you guys to do this because I really think it needed to be like a driver type deal. Of course, promoters can get into this, but really it's you guys, and you guys need to take this to the next level. And you took some things that I'd never even thought of. The What's Up Derby Freaks. That thing is so catchy. You can hashtag it. You can look that phrase up. I mean, all those things, which is really, really neat. And then how do you end your videos?
Let's go, baby.
Yeah, let's go, baby. But the voice is perfect. The voice is perfect. And it's really caught on. I mean, everybody else that's hopped into the TikTok or Facebook scene seems to have a signature or a hashtag that they go to too.
Right.
That's what you do right on those platforms. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. I'm just a regular guy and been doing this derby stuff for a long time, but the social media thing is really, I took it to new places for me. And, I hear people say, "Oh, well, he doesn't win all the big derbies or he doesn't do this," but that's not what it's always about either. For me, it's about having a positive influence on the community and also having a positive influence on what us as derby drivers and builders do, right?
Well, there was I sent this over to you before we got on here, and it was a post by, I'm not sure who the post was. I need to find the original one, but it just says the stereotype or whatever, demolition derby drivers is rednecks and this and that. And people are always talking about how we get beyond that stereotype. How many people have you reached?
Millions, I guess.
Yeah, millions. So like, I guarantee you, whoever you've reached and been the professional version of and showed the professional version of demolition derby, there's millions of people out there that don't think demolition derby is a hillbilly sport solely because of you and your videos and your professionalism and your insight into the build, which is really neat.
Yeah. When I went into this, I didn't really have an image of how I would do things. I was just focusing on being myself and showing people what we love and what we're passionate about. The amount of smart people in this sport, I mean, the list isn't big enough. The ingenuity, the craftsmanship, the workmanship, and just the total toughness that it takes to build these cars. I mean, all the way from your stock cars to your blown out mod cars, it takes a lot of preparation and attention to detail. And, somebody might walk by and say, "Oh, that car is beat to crap," but it's every wire connection. It's pressure in the right places. It's all of these things that make that vehicle go when it is looking at its worst, but actually it's probably its best at that point. As we like to say, we got all the kinks out, and I think that's something that's so special and different about our sport is that vehicle can look a bunch of different ways at the end of the night and still drive on the trailer. And I think that's awesome. And it takes a lot of work to get to that point.
Think of how many people need that education out there. And you're just the start of this, hopefully. I mean, there's been a bunch of other people that have hopped on TikTok and Facebook, but I'm pretty sure you're still leading the way and leading the charge. But just opening all those people's eyes. People talk about, going back to that post, people talk about us becoming recognizable and like not seeing us as hillbillies and this and that. But I think what people don't address, and this is kind of what I've brought up publicly on post, and we've had a chit chat about this, is the steps that need to be taken and put in place for us not to be seen like that. And the steps that you guys as drivers and us as promoters can take it, and getting on social media and getting out there. There's no way you could have traveled the nation for a year and not met 2 million people, 3 million people
Right.
that you got to in the social media stuff. So when people talk about that, let's talk about these steps. I know I've been pretty vocal that county fairs are hurting Demolition Derby, and it's not that county fairs need to go away, in my opinion. It's just that we need to create levels of Demolition Derby. And I think you said, hey, I didn't agree with the county fair comment, and now you're coming around to it. Walk me through that.
Well, when you first told me that, it's been a long time ago, and I really had to think about it because I wasn't sure where you were coming from at that time. I think there are a lot of good things about it, but I also think there's a lot of negative. How many times do fairgrounds and fair boards schedule demolition derbies through the week because they know they can draw a crowd on a Tuesday night, right? They save the horse shows and slow tractor pulls for Saturday night, but they want to bring the crowd on a Tuesday night because they know they get a crowd on the weekend. And I do think there are some fair boards that do a good job of taking care of the drivers. And I also think you got to have the right person in place as a promoter to encourage that, because it's so easy for a fair board to say, oh, it's just a demolition derby. They have junk cars. Let's give them $1,000, right? But instead, we got to take care of these drivers. And also the county fair thing, one good thing about it, I think for someone just getting into the sport and they want to try it out for the first time or second time, I think it's a good place to go. But for all of us who are hardcore about it, they're making a whole lot more money than we are. They're making more than the promoter. They're making more than the drivers. I mean, how many fairgrounds have probably been built from the attendance of Demolition Derby? Thousands of people come to watch us crash our cars and raise Cain on the track, and they collect the money at the gate and build their fairgrounds and pay for all their events that don't get a crowd.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, and that's something that I haven't elaborated on enough. I think is what you were talking about with, county fairs are essential to our sport because they do open people's eyes, and they give people a way or an avenue to participate, and we need those things to help grow our sport. But they've got to keep us healthy as a sport. And any business or any sport or any organization, the health of the sport is determined ultimately by money. And we have these conversations because we really got to bring these things to light. And the county fairs, they're building new buildings, they're building horse barns, they're building, redoing their horse track, they're doing all these things, but it's on our dime. And we're just overlooking it because our community is just consists of such a great number of people that just want to go compete, and they have an avenue to compete, and that's great. But we've got to put our foot down and say, look, we need a little respect. And by respect, I just mean that if we have a organization that can take back the demolition derby, or take some of that money that we bring in at every county fair across the Midwest, you got to think, I mean, I don't want to get into, specific numbers, but I've done the numbers. I mean, there's millions of dollars out there, and I'll refute anyone on this and break it down for anyone. But there's millions and millions of dollars. It's almost like demolition derby drivers are college football players, and the county fairs is the NCAA. That's the best comparison I can make. The NCAA for 100 years, whatever it was that they existed, was making billions of dollars. I know Demolition Derby is not billions of dollars, but it's
Right.
millions of dollars, and we're getting peanuts. I can tell you that um, I bet college football players that or basketball players or any of these college athletes are a lot better off today, than they were 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
And that's simply where we're at. And we just want to shed some light on that. Listen, I get kickback for that. I guarantee it. But if you listen to the kickback, it's generally because you've got a promoter out there promoting things for free. And by the way, that promoter is on a fair board. Imagine that. They have an agenda. They're on a fair board. They want money to come in. Like, there's agendas behind these things. Our agenda to shed the light on this is just to bring money to the sport. And I'm sure you have a couple comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some good points, Dustin. I think there's so many fairs across the country. It's if you said, then just think about your own state, whether it's Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Kansas, Illinois, wherever we're at, the hundreds and hundreds of counties in each state, and almost everybody has a fair, and they have a demolition derby. So it'll never be where everybody is on the same page. But I think as drivers, you have to be careful, especially the drivers who run all the time, of where you go and who you support, because we're always going to have the little local guys and the local shows. But if all those good drivers aren't going to the show, the fans aren't going to go. And all those us guys that run hard, we need to be careful who we support, what promoter, what fair. You got guys like Jordan Rutherford up there that's doing a killer job up in Ohio with Butler. And he's a great example to me of what a county fair demolition derby can be, and giving back to the drivers. And I know that's on a big scale because they have such a big fair, but just a really good example of someone who's passionate about the sport giving back to the drivers. And it's still at the fair, right? I ran a fair this year that normally I wouldn't have went to go, but I needed somewhere to run my car. So sometimes that happens. And I can tell you the fair board was putting on the show. They were inspecting the cars, and they're flipping through the pages in inspection. And I'm explaining to them the rules because I'm the only one there that was from King of Ohio. And they're trying to tell me what to cut, and they don't even know what the rules are. And that right there kills derbies. I didn't add anything to the car, and they're telling me to cut my front plate. It's like, that plate can be 14 inches long, 4 inches wide, 3/8 thick. That's how long that plate is. And he looks at me, he says, "Where's that at?" I said, "It's in the bumper rule." He didn't even know what section it was in. And he's like, "Well, we made everybody else cut that plate." And the other guy, I know I'm rambling, he goes, "Well, theirs went all the way to the A arm." So that kills things, right? It's nothing against the drivers that were there. And but the fair board was paying decent money, but it's hard to get a good quality show when they don't even know the rules. And that is a perfect example of fair boards ruining, because it's going to be hard for me to go back there if the fair board's putting it on.
Well, there's a couple things I want to touch on there, and it matters who you support. And
Yes.
It really does. Like, no promoter is going to be perfect, okay, but it matters who you support. If you go out and you support, your county fair that's not doing anything for the drivers. I just had this conversation online with some truck guys. Truck guys were frustrated because we're thinking about getting rid of trucks at our King event. And the reason being is because the first year we gave out free entries, and we had a $5,000 purse. Largest truck purse in the entire country, $2,500 to win, largest first place prize in the entire country, and no entry fee. And we didn't get turnout. Second year, we put a limit on it and said, look, we got to have X amount of cars, or X amount of trucks in this case, to pay $2,500 to win. We didn't get that, so we paid the percentage. We got Say it was 30 trucks we needed, we got, 14, we paid the percentage, right? And just ran it down that way. And they were frustrated about that, but it matters who you support. I'm more than willing to pay more money, to the drivers to further the sport. But these drivers, or these truck drivers in this case, decided to go run at a county fair that paid $1,000 or $1,500. And those county fairs, or those particular events, or those, like I said, they're great. They're great in one aspect of the sport. Okay, but to further the sport, they're not going to help further the sport. They're not going to pay more. They're not going to take care of the drivers. They're going to pay bare minimum. Like I always say, they've milked the cow. That is Demolition Derby forever, but they've never fed it. Well, it's time we get fed. And how we get fed is organization. You guys, it really matters who you support. If you guys do not support, and I'm not saying it's just us, I'm saying there's a number of promoters that have individual shows that have real risk when they put on these derbies. If you look around, there's been more promoters this year that have canceled shows than I've ever seen. And I can tell you this, county fairs aren't canceling shows because they still get car counting fans. But these promoters are in a real situation in which it's real money on the line and it's their money on the line. And that's got to be, at some point, that's got to be respected and appreciated.
For sure. Dustin, do you think there's too many big shows, and there's it seems like every weekend there's 3-4 shows a guy can run and make 10K, and some guys can run a lot more than others. I don't run as many derbies as a lot of drivers. I run a few big events, and then I run a couple locals. Is usually what I do now. And I don't know if that has a factor or not, but years ago, the big money shows were really few and far between. And now you have, the guys out west that are promoting big shows, and Smash It and You and Iron City and Toast Promotions and all of these, Frankie Guy and his crew, Hardcore and Deadman and TJ, all of these promoters are doing it for the right reason. I agree. But there's so many. I don't know if that kills the counts. And then it seems like when you hit that right show on the right weekend, everybody and their brother's there,
Are you picking on my win? Are you picking on my win? Are you saying that's not a $10,000 credible win?
No, I'm not picking on your win. I'm just saying there's a lot of big shows, and I can see why counts are low at some bigger shows now because there's so many. The guys who compete at that level can only run so many big shows in a year. That's my point.
Wow. If you're picking on my show, I would say a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
Yeah.
You run enough shows, you get lucky.
That's right.
But to your point, to talk about that, I don't think that there's too many on the if there's too many $10,000 to win shows. I don't think there is, because I think almost every derby that exists should be a $10,000 to win show, because that's how much money we're bringing in. If you think about these county fairs, I think the sense of $10,000 show being a big show kind of has to shift, because like I said, every show should be a $10,000 to win show. And so I guess that comes with winning that, or the prestige, should shift a little bit, almost to like we have majors in Demolition Derby, like they do in golf, where there's a bunch of little events, but here's the major events. And that's kind of what we're going to do with our 50K to win, is we want that to be the premier event. And then there's going to be 2 other events that go along with that, that are like the majors. So they're going to be $10,000 to win shows, and they're going to run separately. So just like the PGA Championship is not the same as the Links and the British Open, different golf. Right. Well, our shows are going to be different too. I mean, there's going to be some one-shot deals. I think one of them's going to be heats and a feature. One of them's going to be a one-shot deal, and then you got our format. So if you think about it that way, I think our perspective just needs a change on the $10,000 show. If we became an entity in which somebody belonged to us, let's say like tractor pulls, okay? There was an entity like, what is the NTP tractor pulls, National Tractor Pulls? That's what it is. All those people belong to that organization. You're only going to see the NTP tractor pulls run when they put on an event. Therefore, they can demand X amount of money. If we created a circuit with you drivers in which the only way to see Jason Kinman run is to see this circuit, there's your majors. Okay, now there's your iconic wins. There's your iconic top fives. This guy's got this. That's what I think we need to create in Demolition Derby. We tried to do it with like King of Ohio and structure it that way. It's just, you've got to have so much buy-in from county fairs and just people in general that it's extremely tough to get it off the ground and be successful. So we're going to switch it up and just go about it just a little bit a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's a lot of hoops there to jump through. There's so many people that want to be involved or don't want to be involved. It's going to fight it too, right? Like anything. Yeah,
I mean, look, you can think of a million reasons to not do it. And the fact of the matter is nobody's really doing anything. I mean, there's not been really any attempt at organization and the Demolition Derby in recent memory. I mean, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah. I mean, there's been people who've done associations that drivers can basically join with small perks, entries to the show, you get first dibs or a discounted price. But as far as a group that runs a certain set of derbies, not that I'm aware of, that hasn't been attempted.
And that brings me to another point is a lot of people talk about getting on similar rules. I don't think people realize the time and effort that needs to go into making rules unified and then enforcing them.
Right.
We don't get paid for this. At least I certainly don't. And now you over there, on the other hand, you're rolling in some dough. But
what?
Yeah, with the TikTok and Facebook stuff, you got to let people in on that.
Well, I mean, there's a little money to be made,
Yeah.
Per
this
view.
This guy's made more than I have, and I put on like 5 shows. He's made more in a month.
All right. I hope you all have some tall boots for that comment, because
no.
There's benefits to having a few views, so starting to get a little payoff from that. It helps with the price of everything going up too, buying steel and parts. And I'm pretty hard on tires because I'm a bad driver. So, it's always good to get a few extra dollars to pay for some derby parts.
Yeah, I had to throw that shot in there. But on a serious note, there is some money to be made on what Jason's doing. And that was kind of something, I don't know if I even knew that. Did you know that going into it?
I thought you had to be bigger to really make anything, I mean, I didn't think what I'm doing was enough to make some extra, cash. But so far we've made a little bit and more welding wire.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's building his new house right now.
That's right. I wish.
So getting back to what we were talking about with what were we talking about? Where were we at?
We were talking about running almost like a series of shows with certain drivers type of thing. We just kind of finished that up. But
yeah, so running that series of shows with those drivers, it really, any promoter out there or any group of promoters can come together, but gosh, man, if you don't get the support from the drivers, it's just not going to go anywhere. So I guess I want to ask you a couple questions. So how can you get the support from the drivers? What does it take us to do as promoters, or just maybe it's not, it doesn't even involve Triple D. Maybe it's some other entity. What does it take?
I think a lot of drivers don't want to commit to such a big thing like that. You know firsthand how time consuming it is to build cars and to run cars. I mean, you're winning 10,000 and your wife goes into labor. So you know how life can be. And I think for me, that would be the biggest thing for me. It would be hard to commit to 4 or 5 shows or whatever it is for that year ahead of time because there's other shows that guys like to run too. You know, like I run Blizzard Bash, and all the drivers know and builders know what a time commitment that is. And basically from late July to the end of the year, I'm focusing on that. So I think it can happen. For me, it would be hard for me to commit to 3, 4, 5 shows over the winter. You know, I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I'd really have to look at the schedule and the time frame, right? Because if you have to build a really tough mod car for all 3 shows or for 2 of them, maybe okay, but you start getting 5, 6 shows, I think it gets harder. The money, we know the money's there to be made. Money is a motivator, but not everything for me. Not very many people take home the money. You know, you look at King of Ohio and Mr. Bond there took home the big check, and Rutherford took home 2nd place. And there was a lot of awesome cars there that people didn't see. And as a driver, and this is something I want people to understand, this isn't me on the Dustin train, because Dustin and I have had our differences also.
No,
for me, this guy paid cash money. You know, I think they paid $79,000, $80,000 cash money, and I think 1,500 people showed up to the show. Now, the car count was a lot better than his previous year, and for anybody who was there, they know the quality was at a very top level. And myself running Blizzard Bash and running there and Bash for Cash, the quality top to bottom was some of the best I've ever seen. And kudos to all the drivers that made it to the show and ran. It is hard to put yourself out there in the format, I think, because you cannot hide. You have to beat 2 cars, and you might be the short end of the stick, or you may not. You don't know. But I think those who didn't get to see it really missed out. And that type of build, you know, you can run multiple shows with. So I think if there was a group of shows, it would have to be careful with the timing in between the events, I think is the big one. For me anyways, timing's everything.
Well, I think it is too. And our goal with the 50,000 to win event is to have 100 cars or close to 100 cars compete in that, like, Daytona 500 event, right? And then the next 2 shows, there's going to be, we think, 40 to 80 cars left over that can compete at the next 2 events, which is pretty neat. I know from a promoter standpoint, it's really hard to pay out that type of money and not get the cars. And it's because at that point you're just, I mean, everybody can do the math. You're just literally reaching in your own pocket to pay these drivers, and that's difficult to do, and you can't sustain that forever, right? But the quality of my hat's off to the quality of build and those guys being able to willing to put it on the line. But that's hard, and that's why we want to establish those 3 shows, because these other 2 promoters that will be involved in this, you know, they're tired of the same thing. They're tired of 12 cars showing up, and then if you don't pay the 10,000 to win when 12 cars show up, you know, you're the worst thing that's ever existed in Derby in history. And it's like,
Right.
What do you want me to do here? And everybody's just getting pulled pretty thin doing that. So that type of build, because a lot, this has been brought up a lot, Jason, and I'm sure you got some comments on this. the King class is not a light build. It's not, in my opinion, it's not a super heavy build. I just built a car to Iron City's Pro Stock rules that was as hard as those King cars. If you put a full cradle in them.
Right.
And I mean, we had more welding on that thing than you guys had a little bit better cage than what I put in that car. But geez, I mean, you're allowed these bumper brackets, you're allowed patchet plates. I mean, everything's done up on those cars. I feel, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I feel when you're in the format and you got to put it on the line, I feel that you're going to have to use your car. And especially if we go to 2 rounds, which we're going to go to 2 rounds of the format this year,
Right.
that you're going to need a car to get to the end. Am I wrong on that?
Well, you might be asking the wrong guy. I've always deferred to the heavier builds. I have run a lot of bone stock cars myself. I have one in the yard right now that I ran earlier this year, but I like to have a car, because even when stuff does bend, it's easily fixable, and then you're locked in tight, and you can really use it. I think your feature was only like 45 minutes for that caliber car. That's good. That means the action was good. Heat wise, I think it depends on the drivers on the track. Zach Leese and I were going at it for a long time in my heat, and we both had a lot of bent parts and bent frames and no steering and all of these things. But I think for me, the little bit heavier build for multiple rounds is the way to go. If it's a one-shot deal, I think the lighter build's the way to go. I think cars bend more and the action is still really good. These Pro Stock cars have pretty much the same drive line as the heavier cars, just maybe not a full cradle and not as much pressure to this, or maybe different bumper rules or whatever the rule is, right? But for me, multiple rounds, I'm going to always defer to the heavier build. And maybe that's just personal preference, but if I had to choose, that's what I would choose.
I think you got to believe we can get 100 cars across the country to compete for that type of money. I mean, you're talking 50,000, man.
Well, you got 60 pre-entered for 25,000. I would think you could get 100 for 50,000.
It ended up being 83 too, because we replaced 23 of the original drivers. So
right. So and you might have the same situation. You take 100 and 25 can't make it, and you maybe get 15, 20 more to say, hey, I can make it. I think what's also good about the harder rules is a lot of different cars can compete. Whether it's a GM sedan, whether it's a wagon, whether it's a Crown Vic, whether it's an Imperial, whatever it is, a lot of those cars have some weaknesses, but the rules are good enough to where cars can compete. I think Braun was in a GM 2-door, and then Rutherford was in a 2000, and then there was wagons in the top 5. So there was a good mix of cars even in the feature,
I want to talk about that. One thing we want to do with this 50,000 to win show is we want to appeal to the outside. And I get that the King of Ohio is kind of insinuating that, it's Ohio only. And
right.
We've done a pretty good job at branding that, so people really recognize that. And I think we got a, great logo and whatnot, but I think we're going to market this class or maybe this event from now on as just the King. And the reason being is because we need some of those outside competitors.
Yeah. Guys out west for sure.
Yeah. The guys out west, I mean, we got to pull those guys in, man. And
guys out west, I don't know. I would say the bigger money would have to appeal because it makes it worth their trip even more, right? 25K is a lot of money, and that should be worth your trip. But 50K, it's like, what are we doing? Why are we not running out there? I haven't talked to a lot of those guys. I have heard people say they didn't care for the format, but I don't know if that applies to those guys. And as far as the format, There's good and bad about it, you know. But I think for 50,000, and if you're one of the best in the country and you don't want to run for 50,000, then what are we doing?
Exactly. And that's the bar we're trying to set. Like, hey, you can
That's
say
cold
whatever.
hard cash. Who doesn't want to win that in a demolition derby?
That's a pretty big stack of cash too.
Yeah.
You know, the 25 was big, double that.
Have you talked to many drivers out west, Dustin?
I've reached out to several. I talked to Chad Markley last week. He has a pretty good following. He's
a great driver.
Yeah, he's shown some interest. Obviously, things need to fall. I know they would like those guys out west would like it to be a little more centrally located, you know, so they're not driving 15, 16 hours. But you know, to that, I mean, obviously the Ohio drivers would like it to be the same, you know, that the same for Blizzard Bash. You know, it's a half a day trip or more to get out there. And you know, I understand, you know, that it's a 16-hour drive. I understand, you know, wanting it to be a little more in the middle of the country. I get all that. And I hope someday we can make that happen, you know, and kind of spread the love out a little more. But 50,000, I'm driving 16 hours tomorrow for 50,000.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no doubt.
Yep. I mean, there's so many guys out this way that go out west for Kansas for Blizzard Bash. Now it's not 16 hours, it's probably 12 or 13, but I do hope to see a lot of those guys show interest because, man, there's some awesome drivers and awesome builders, and they know these hard cars really well, you know, because that is a more common thing out there than it is here now. You know, they do a lot with turnbuckles and pressure and all these things that some guys out here haven't even seen. So I think it'd be pretty cool to see the builds that come in, and I could see a group of them coming. I don't know if they are, but I could see a group of guys coming, bringing 4 or 5 cars, and maybe half of them get to the feature, you know, and that could really mix things up, you know, with the groups of drivers we have in this area as well.
People that haven't been out to Blizzard Bash, when I went out to you with you guys last year, and you guys were kind enough to invite us in the pits and everything, I think this is what we're going to see at the King with these 2 rounds. Is some of these rounds, especially the second round and then the feature, could be won in the pits, and that's what you guys preach out there. And you know, bringing lifts, changing motors, trannies 2 or 3 times in a weekend. You guys do that out there, and I think anyone that comes from out west, they may have a little bit of an advantage because they know what to do to these cars. They can work on these cars as well in the pits as they can in their own garage, and that was probably the most impressive thing that I've seen.
Yeah, you got guys out there been running that show 10, 11 years, especially a lot of the Kansas guys, you know, Justin Montgomery and Chad Markley and Jimmy Johnson and all that crew. They've been fixing these cars in barns and parking lots for 10 years and at that derby. And the reason we're talking about that derby is because these cars get destroyed. I mean, suspension, motors, transmissions, rear ends, you know, you name it. If it's going to break, it breaks out there. And I do think in Kansas, that derby is won in the pits a lot. And I think with the multiple rounds, it can be a big factor at the King of Ohio. And, you know, when you go out there, you take everything but the kitchen sink with you, you know. And if they come this way, they'll do the same because they know what it takes in the pits. You know, there was a lot of big name drivers at the show this past year, and I would love to see that grow. You know, what's it take to get Markley and Brandon Johnson and Don Santel and all of these guys, some of the Team Bushlight guys, and that are just badasses at this sport. And if you can get all those together, man, it could be really amazing.
It could, well, it's just, I think it would just be a major. Look, you guys all compete against each other out there. That's a major of the sport. this could be another major of the sport.
Right.
Check off and kind of put you guys on a pedestal. Do you remember us having the conversation in the pits when you're working on your amp, and I'm like, hey, you're working on your lower ball joint, and the whole thing's completely ripped off. They're re-welding it. I'm like, hey man, you got to do something about this radiator. And you're like, we got plenty of time. I just couldn't believe that you just hooked that thing up to a winch, pulled it out, shoved another radiator. I mean, I'm sitting here, I got 2 days in that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's ridiculous. And I know I'm alone.
Your face was the best part.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you can't go out there without a radiator. I mean, come on. Like, let me put the radiator in it. You're like, no, we're working underneath the car. We're all good. I'm like, are you sure, man? Are you sure?
You were more stressed than I was at that point. You're like, this guy, they won round one, and I had some steering issues, as most Imperials find out that lost a front wheel, and I got smoked by the guy from RPM, and he pushed my doghouse back into the fan shroud and everything. And that was the least of my worries at that point. And I think that just comes with years of working on these cars and stressful situations. And I always said, you got to start at the most important part and go to the least important part. And for me, the radiator was the least important at that time. And I knew we could straighten it and have it in there in 5 minutes. And that's what we did. Good news is the doghouse didn't move after that. I was able to keep the front wheels on it.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think translation for everyone out there, what he said in the pits was, hey, rookie, get back in the truck. It's cold out here. Let us do the work. All right. And just sit back and watch the show. And I'm telling you what, I was like, dude, there's no way. There is no way.
Yep. I have a really good crew. My brother and I have worked together for many years. And then my friends, Jack and Brandon Adams, I actually build my car in their garage. I don't have my own shop. And then my friends, Robbie Crittenden with Simple Solutions and his crew were all there helping us. And we had a great crew and a lot of good help. And if I forgot somebody, I apologize, but I'll have them all with me this year. So when I get some lessons on the national side, I'll have people to help me put it back together.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to be just fine. I saw the new shirts this year. They look absolutely fire.
Yeah, they're very nice.
I know you guys are going to have a great team. Tell me what you're bringing out there.
I'm taking a 74 Olds 98. So it's a nice, clean car.
Why is that?
Suspension. For me, it's suspension. Out there, most people lose something in the ball joint, tie rod, lower A-arm. I know those cars are really strong in that department. And for me out there, you can make the front end of any of those cars really hard. The Imperial was stupid hard in the nose, but 03s and up are awesome. These GMs are awesome. For me, it boils down to suspension, because if you can't keep the front wheels steering and moving out there, well, you're in trouble. So, and I also like a new challenge. 3 years out there, I've run 3 different cars. So I run a Crown Vic, an Imperial, and now I'm taking an Olds. So I liked a new challenge, and someone always said it's the same puzzle, just different pieces. So that's why.
That's true. That's very true. These guys, I coming to the King this year, and it's 50,000 to win.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think a lot of guys do homework and they understand, that, hey, there's going to be multiple rounds? Well, they don't understand it yet, but they're going to, because as we put it out. Do you think they're going to bring the garage? Do you think these guys, you don't have to call anyone out here, but do you think the guys, in the Midwest here, do they got what it takes to put in that work at the track?
I think there's a big portion of them that do. I know some guys don't like multiple rounds because they don't want to work on their cars at the track. Now, some guys' stuff holds together good enough that maybe they don't have to. but there's always something you can do to the cars. You can go out there and both cars have a mechanic malfunction and your car's not hurt. You can take 9-wire, your patch plates, whatever it is, and improve that car. I know in Kansas we don't stop. And I think there is a good group of drivers from this area that will do the same. I think some guys will probably bring the minimum, but I think overall your top runners and your top derbiers will bring the shop to the track basically and have everything they need and have the crew to get you there. It's important. It's hard to do it by yourself at the track when you're working multiple rounds.
Well, just the lack of sleep leading up to the event. You guys know,
Yes.
the car's never done. You're working on it as you're getting ready to go to the Derby. It's not like it sits in the car or the garage for a week and then you get to, rest up for your big weekend.
Right.
That never happens. So if you come alone, or if you think that you're not gonna have a pit crew, it's gonna be tough. That could be a tough weekend for you. And
yes, very tough.
You guys know that out there, man. I mean, very impressive with what you guys do. What else you want to talk about?
I don't have a lot. When are you going to announce things?
We're slowly going to put things out. We've been putting things out, to get everybody talking. Everybody, yeah, you got to draw that interest. Listen, we're fully aware that we need to get this spark rolling for several of these Derby drivers, specifically out west or in the Midwest that haven't ran for us before. So we're kind of lighting that spark now, seeing what these guys say, whatever.
Right.
Then we're finalizing a few things. So yes, we think we have 3 promoters that are all in.
That's awesome.
That are going to work together and provide you guys a series of events. So I put that much out there, and we think we're going to kick it off with that 50,000. But it really comes down to your guys' support. I mean, we've got to have cars in order to pay that much money.
Yes.
We got to have the buy-in, and I think we've got to do a good job of getting on these different podcasts and getting on social media and getting it out there of what 50,000 is, talking about what it takes to put on a $50,000 to win show, talking about that for the first time ever in a demolition derby, you, Jason Kinman, could win more than what you have in the car. And I know some of these guys will come with more than 50,000 in their car, but several of these guys, whoever wins the show, could come away with some money. And
yeah, not me. I don't have that in mind. I have a lot, but I know some guys have a little more, they're in the 50, 60K range, but I'm more in the 30 range in my setup. So.
You sure about that?
Yeah, I know exactly what it costs.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty
Those
standard.
guys can have 700 horsepower, Dustin. I don't want it.
I agree. The only time
that's a different topic.
The only time I've ever seen 700 horsepower get to the ground was Pete Hansen. And I don't know how he got that 700 horsepower to the dirt. But man, he could push anything wherever he wanted.
Yeah. Pete is on a different level. I have much respect for him, and got to talk to him a lot in Ohio, which was really good. And I enjoyed those conversations and friendly banter. And you can learn a lot by listening to those who have done this longer than you. And that's what I try to do, is listen and learn. And it's nothing against those big motors. It's just not for me. I think it just puts too much pressure on everything else. But opinions are like, and everybody has one. So.
Well, Pete took a little while to figure his combination out. I mean,
yes.
If you've talked to Pete, that, there was several years there with that big money in that motor. There was a missing piece there. And it wasn't the drive shaft, rear end, or motor, but that tranny, he had, trouble with that tranny holding up. And I think he's got that thing dialed in and figured out now.
For sure. Yeah, he's a force no matter where he goes.
Yeah, I mean he did some R&D there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we getting this show out there is this show a show like this doesn't just arise out of nowhere. I mean, you've got to talk about it, you've got to hype it up. Um, you've got
Yes.
to educate people on it. A lot of people don't even know what the format is, right?
Mhm.
They don't understand what they're getting into. Some people don't understand that it's not a qualifying event. I've heard that, because as we progress in our promotion here, we started out as a qualifying event only. So
Right.
we've got to educate those people. If you think 50,000 to win, we're going to be doing 50,000 to win. We're going to have multiple heats. We're going to pay heat winners for the first time at the King, which is pretty neat, because I think it should mean a lot to win a heat. And
Right. What if you get timed out because you lost steering? Is there a second chance for that guy?
there is
Oh,
a second
that's all
chance
right.
for that
Okay.
guy. See, that's
Okay.
something we got to educate people on, because we didn't have consies, right?
Right.
In the past. So we know how much you guys want to compete, and we don't want to take that out of your hands. But I want you guys to understand where we come from. We don't want anybody shutting off. When you
Right.
have this type of money on the line, there's no shutoffs for nobody, no how, no why, nope, not happening.
Right.
So a consi is going to be very difficult, but we're going to offer a consi, and you're going to have a consi from round 1 losers and a consi for round 2 losers.
Okay.
If you win round 1 and 2, you have to beat 4 total cars to make the feature. As you know, there's not a lot of cars that make our feature.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's earned, and you shouldn't have to beat the same guy 2 or 3 times
Right.
throughout a derby. And look, man, as well as anyone, when you get in this format, it's kill or be killed. And I don't believe that there should be consequences for you taking a shot on somebody later on in the derby. And
Right.
I'm saying in a different round or in the feature, because if you pick on my buddy or you pick on me, let's say you beat me in round 1, and now you got to face me in round 2 because somehow I magically gave a trophy to everybody and let everybody back in. That's
Right.
not fair to you. It's not fair.
That's absolutely true.
So the consi is going to be something that you're really going to have to earn. In this caliber of car, I still believe that you can go out and you could lose the first round and still make it to the feature. Every car that makes the feature is going to have $2,000 in their pocket. So
Nice.
you're going to be, that can come in handy, heck, throughout the weekend, because you're going to be buying parts and this and that,
Right.
to get your car ready. So there's just some minor details of what we have in store for the year.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask a question you might not have the answer, but what do you think is gonna get the people there to watch?
Well, isn't that a great question?
Because I've never been to a derby of that size with less people. I think I told you I was kind of heartbroken about it, because I wanted people to see me run too, and I knew there was going to be some good heats, and I knew the feature was going to be good. And of course, there's always heats that are going to be slower, and that's in any derby. There's a few promoters really promoting the heavy hitting hard, and that's helped some. But most derbies, you're always going to have slow action at some point. But as a fan, what's going to draw the fans there?
Well, if I had the answer to that, we wouldn't be sitting here debating it. I can tell you that. All
That's
we
true.
can do is put on the best product that we could possibly, display, and that is, hey, get the best drivers in the nation there, give them a stage to compete on. I understand that the atmosphere means a lot. When you come into victory lane and you're celebrating in front of 5,000 people instead of 1,500, it's a different story. What I will say is, I challenge the derby community to come out and see this. I know that these guys are going to put it on the line in the most competitive individual situation there is in Demolition Derby. And if you're a fan, how do you miss that?
Right.
Also, I will say we're being compared in a time, it's a different time than it was 15 years ago. We're being compared to other shows out there that have existed for 15 years.
That's true.
They didn't have anyone in the stands either the first couple of years. I can promise
Right.
you that. But because I've been there every year. But as it grew, it became more of a party scene. Okay. And some of these derbies, you think about late Metal Mayhem. Metal Mayhem suffered a lot as a derby, but the people were still showing up late into Metal Mayhem's run, like big run, is because it was the party place. It was the get together. It was the meet up with the buddies once a year type deal. And I hope as we continue to have this, we can establish that. Not that this becomes like a huge party scene, but to see the guys that you respect a lot, and whatnot, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep. Sure does.
And we're battling that. We heard some stuff about the money for the weekend, and the cost that it takes to get into the fairgrounds. But to that, man, you can't go anywhere and see some entertainment for $33 a day. And that's, I mean, heck, you fill up your gas tank. I don't know about you, but my truck costs $200 to fill up.
Yeah, diesel is not cheap.
Yeah, so I mean, for $33 a day. So, I think we're dealing with a little bit of that. And people are the hot thing, right? People want to do what's hot. And I think as we progress this thing, I think you'll see the crowds grow tremendously. And ultimately, what that means is we'll get an opportunity to give a little more back to the sport and get a little bigger stage for you drivers and keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, for sure. So how, with that many cars, is it 3 cars at a time? Is it 6 cars? Is it 9 cars? What are you going to do?
Well, gosh, I mean, that the format was created, okay, with 15 cars on the track, supposed to be 15 cars on the track at a time. And that means 5 groups of 3 cars, okay? I don't know if we'll do quite 15, but 9 to 12, depending on what we get to show up, is certainly going to happen. Okay. Last year, I feel like we made I don't want to say it was a critical mistake, but I think that there's more to show with our program. And we chose to go 3 cars on the track. And for the simple fact is we didn't want any funny business. We didn't want any cars helping any cars. And in reality, what we've got to do, Jason, is we've just got to put our foot down and say, look, if this happens, you're no longer going to be competing at our event. But we need that action. I felt like, just as you guys did, I felt like we maybe had 5 out of the 13 heats. We had 5 or 6 that were really good. We had 5 that were complete duds, and we had a couple that were in between. Right. And I also think that comes with educating drivers on what we need, and drivers understanding that this is about entertainment, and you have to provide entertainment first. I understand you got a lot of money in your cars. I understand you got a lot of time, but turning 2,000 RPMs for 30 minutes, that can't happen. That can't happen. You've got to compete. You've got to, when we say compete, you don't have to look any further than you and Lisa's heat. You guys were like animals out there. I mean, that's what we want, and that's entertaining. Now, is it really entertaining when it's down to 2 cars? No. So we know we got to limit the 2 cars at the end battle. But I can tell you that our heats average 23 minutes. Okay. There's not a derby in the nation that can pay that type of money and get 23-minute heats. There just never has been.
Right.
And there's not a Derby in the country that can get a 40, I think it's like a 42-minute feature of actual time and pay 25,000 to win. So we got to be doing something right.
Right. For sure. A lot of positives, people always want to point out the negatives, but there's also a lot of positives. And that's something when you're faced with adversity that people really need to learn how to do. How I was raised, you got to look at the bright things. And I think it might have been Nathan Brown that said at some point, every time you drive onto the track, it's a win. We are doing what we love to do in front of thousands of people. I mean, if you can't get excited about that, we're all competitors. We all want to win. Some of us expect to win every show. Some of us don't. But we got to keep things in perspective too, the big picture. And sometimes people forget that.
Yeah, and it's perspective for a reason. All right, your perspective is different than my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when we go back and look at this year, ultimately, and hopefully more people do some things like what we're doing right now, is if you look back at the year, 39 cars to get the show up of that caliber of build didn't happen anywhere else in the country. I would be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit disappointed, that only 39 showed up. But in reality, 39 didn't show up anywhere else in the country. So we didn't know what the economy was going to do. We didn't know, people catch a tough break here, tough break there, can't get cars. It turned out to be a pretty tough year for promoters.
Right.
And there's been several shows that have been canceled. And when we made the decision even to cancel our Indiana show, you can always look back in hindsight and say that was a good decision. It turned out to be a really great decision because it just wasn't going to be a win. The timing just wasn't right. It wasn't spaced out enough for you guys. And we didn't have enough original cars to have that second show and it be popular, and
Right.
That's the perspective. We didn't have that when we ran the King. So we were a little bit disappointed. You look up in the stands, I can tell you that if we have the same growth from year 1 to year 2 as year 2 to year 3, I'll be really happy because we doubled the attendance. So if we double it again, we're going to be looking at, I mean, you're going to be looking at 3,000, 3,500 people.
That's a good goal for sure.
Yeah, I mean, realistic goal, and hopefully we can get there. Hopefully.
I mean, who doesn't want to see the Brauns and the Allens and Pete Hansen and all these top-notch guys drive? Who doesn't want to see that? That's what I don't understand. Even if I wasn't to run the show, I would want to go watch. I don't understand that at all.
Well, we're in this weird time, and you're on a different end than I am, and you have taken on this role really well, but the drivers have got to become a part of the promotion.
Right.
And if people don't know that those names are running, or like if Chad Markley decides to come from Kansas, or that, I know you're going to let people know that you're coming, but if those types of names don't let people know, well, of course they're going to miss out, because that would have intrigued them. So we've really got to do a good job of promoting all this together.
Mm-hmm.
And we're putting out the largest first place payout of any single individual event in the history of Demolition Derby. I know there was a 50,000 out in Utah. Don't want to get into details, but they didn't pay 50,000 for first. We're paying 50,000 for first. So it's the largest single payout in the history, and you guys have really got to be involved in that. I know it's uncomfortable. I just put myself out there for a Derby myself over in PA. I know it was a little bit uncomfortable for me to do that, because you've got to back it up, right? And if you're going to talk any trash or anything like that, you got to back it up. But it's all about promotion, and it's all about entertainment. And we've got to be able to see at least the players involved, meaning the drivers and promoters. They've got to realize that this is an entertainment piece, and that's all we are here to do is entertain. I know we're competing in our own little world, but guys, if we don't get fans next year and we pay 50,000, you might not see a $50,000 to win show for a long time.
Right.
And, that would be disappointing for the sport.
For sure.
So, yeah, we got to get you guys involved. How do we? I know you do a great job. How do we get these guys to talk? Get on the camera.
I think a lot of them will never talk. They'll never post a video. They'll never do that. But the ones who do can just do more. Talk up your builds. Talk up the drivers that are going. That's something I'm trying to work on. Also, is other drivers on social media, encourage them, support them, share their posts. Hey, check this guy out. Things like that will help. And word of mouth, it travels so fast, right? And I think the right people just really have to be positive about what's happening this year, not what happened in years past, but let's look forward and be positive.
Well, I hope we can do that. I hope we get out to these drivers and promote this thing together. I hope drivers are more willing to post pictures throughout the build. I remember I would give anything to be a fly on the wall in some of these garages. See these pictures along with the build. I've got some content I'll be putting out of my build for Iron City, and
nice.
It gets the most attention. I did a walkthrough. There's nothing to hide there.
Well, here's the thing. If you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, or you don't want nobody to see, don't show that part. Big deal. Show the 90 other awesome things you did on your car. Like, show somebody how to weld a door plate on. Show a kid how to cut a miter on a cage. Show somebody how you set your steering up. Show somebody how you tighten your body bolts. There's a lot of things that I'm excited to show that I haven't shown, but there's so many better ways to do it than I do it. There's so many people who do it a different way. And the more you do that, people want to come watch you run. I know a lot of people come to watch me run. I didn't even know who they were. That's never happened to me in my entire life. And it's all because they felt like they were part of my car build. They felt like they were in my garage helping me, right? And young kids, I went to Scottsburg, Indiana. This young kid come up to me, him and his dad. And his dad's like, man, I get sick of seeing your videos. He watches your videos all the time. But he learned something. And then he'll ask me questions. So I think as a drivers, the ones who do feel comfortable, you have to put yourself out there a little bit. And you don't have to show everything that you don't want to show, but you can show you can show how you build a battery box, a simple process, right? And that's something about Demolition Derby we talked about earlier, what it takes to do this. When you can build a Demolition Derby car from the ground up, you know how many skills that takes? Yeah. Cutting, torching, plasma cutting, welding, body work, electrical, driveline work, all these different things. The list is 1,000 long. And if you can just show a few things, it gets people invested into you, into your car. They want to come up to you and take a picture of your car because they saw you put the motor in. They saw you put a door plate on. They saw you bolt your roof sign on. These are all simple things that we can show. And not only will you teach somebody something, but they're invested in you and your car. And they're like, hey, I come to watch you run because I follow you on social media. That was the biggest surprise for me. And also the biggest gratification of the process.
that is such another level to be on, and I don't think a lot of people have been able to experience it, but they're going to. It's going to
Yes, they will.
it's there's going to be those things. Your t-shirts. I mean, there was a ton of people that bought these t-shirts. Some of these people you didn't even know,
Right.
that are buying these t-shirts, and that's really cool, just based off of what you've done. Another thing I want to talk about, Jason, is when we create content, I found myself doing the same thing. It's like, well, do I really want to videotape this? Because I don't know if this is the right way to do it. And it's like,
Yeah.
who cares about the right way? It's my way. And if you want to show me a better way, that's, show me,
Yeah. They'll let
educate
you
me.
know.
Yeah.
They will send you a message. Trust me.
Well, that's cool though. I mean, in a sense, look, you're going to be able to take some heat, or you have to be able
Yep.
to take some heat. You're going to have to put yourself out there. I felt myself even questioning myself, like, hey, setting up these toast watts brackets, okay, or setting up my front plate on my car, or, hey, defining what a lower cradle is. Like we talked about all those things, and to capture that, I was like, man, are people, you second guess yourself. And I guess to those those future creators, just put it out there. Help our sport. Every video you put out there, every time you do one of these podcasts, there's people tuning in. We might get 250 views on this thing, but we might reach 150 new people out of that 250, and
Right.
um,
I mean, you got guys like Sickles and Iceman and a lot of different guys who have millions of views. I think Offer Him videos or something like that. He's got a video that's got maybe 5 million views. You start adding that up, we might get 50 million views this year. It's crazy how many people you can reach through the social media, and it helps our sport. It doesn't hurt us at all. It helps us.
No, it's not hurting us at all. It's content. You guys have become content creators, and if you want sponsors, someday, that's what you need. You need a following.
Yes.
You need people to follow the 28,000 that follows Jason Kinman, that when he puts a product out there, they know that, hey, they're reaching 28,000 people.
That's
And
right.
that's really, really neat. Guys, that's how you get to do what you love to do for a living, is you influence people. That's it. It's a very simple combination, and I think you guys are really taking this and running with it.
Yes. It's amazing what it turned into, for sure.
I think we're only scratching the surface.
I think so.
I tell you what, man, it was great chatting with you. I
Same to
hope
you.
everybody enjoyed. What is this, episode 7 of the War Room? We covered a lot of different topics, and I'm sure we'll get on here and do this again.
I appreciate you, Dustin. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.